wasn't. I think the apology was for him. It wasn't. So you're gonna see it. I can't even think about that with my mind being blown. You're gonna see it. It's going to shock you. The whole apology, all of the apologies,
Yeah.
all of it. I watched a little bit for the tell-all, like these little clips, and I was like, "You did what? You said what? What?" It was all for him. It was his apology. He needed to hear it more than anybody. He had his agenda that he needed to do.
The latest revelations are here, and they're nothing short of shocking. But this time, it's not about dollars or bank accounts. Christine Brown has opened up in a way fans have been waiting on for years, an emotional accounting straight from her heart. Her memoir, Sister Wife, has finally landed in bookstores, and the stories inside are as raw as they come. Page after page, Christine lays it all out, and the truth she's sharing is hotter than anyone expected. The bombshell everyone's talking about is finally here. Christine Brown has confirmed what longtime fans have quietly suspected for years. Kody Brown was using the show itself as a tool for control. According to her memoir, Kody treated the filming schedule like his personal weapon, turning the cameras into a system of rewards and punishments. If the family played along nicely for the viewers, things went smoothly. But if someone stepped out of line, the consequences were swift. Christine describes how, if anyone dared to show frustration or disagree during filming, Kody would respond by pulling back completely. He'd stop visiting that wife's house, stop spending time with her kids, and instead focus all his attention on the family members who were cooperating. What looked to outsiders like ordinary family rotation, Kody spending time with one wife or another, was, in reality, a carefully calculated way of rewarding loyalty and punishing resistance. For fans who've been watching Sister Wives for over a decade, this revelation feels like the missing piece of the puzzle. It explains why so many heartwarming family scenes felt off, why viewers' instincts kept saying something wasn't right. Christine is now putting it in black and white. Those moments were not natural. They were staged under the pressure of Kody's control. Online, the reaction has been explosive. On the Sister Wives subreddits, moderators had to create a massive discussion thread just to keep up with the constant flow of early reader reactions. And the consensus is clear. Christine held nothing back. She laid out, step by step, how Kody twisted the show into his ultimate control mechanism. Imagine the setup. You're in a family where attention and resources are already stretched thin. Your husband has 3 other wives, and you're constantly competing for his time and affection. Then add the cameras, rolling every other day, recording every look, every tone, every genuine emotional response. But here's the catch. Those emotions had to match the story Kody and his preferred wife wanted to tell. One wrong look, one honest moment of hurt or disappointment, and you were immediately punished with his absence. Christine explains that everyone in the family had to constantly monitor themselves while filming. Wives had to keep smiles plastered on, even when they disagreed with decisions that excluded them. Children had to show excitement for announcements they had no voice in, or risk being pushed further down their father's priority list. Every family meeting, every big reveal, every supposedly spontaneous moment was conducted under this unspoken threat: perform happiness or face isolation. For anyone who's experienced emotional manipulation, Christine's stories strike a familiar chord: the withholding of affection, the moving of goalposts, the demand to stay grateful while your needs are ignored. It's manipulation at its most basic, and it was happening on national television. What makes her account so chilling is how long this system lasted. For years, the Brown family lived under these rules. According to Christine, Kody used the show's filming schedule as the perfect setup for psychological control. With cameras rolling every other day, the family had to treat each session like a high-stakes test. One mistake could mean losing his presence in their household entirely. Christine even breaks down how the system worked in practice. Kody would stay overnight at the homes of his original 3 wives, Christine, Janelle, and Mary, but only if they were compliant and cheerful on camera. A single slip-up during filming, like showing disappointment at a family announcement, was enough to make him pack his bag and move on to the next wife's house. From the outside, it looked like normal family scheduling. But Christine makes clear, it wasn't about connection. It was about control. The most disturbing part of all this is the long-term damage it caused. Over time, wives and children started losing track of their own true feelings. When you're constantly forced to adjust your reactions to avoid punishment, you begin to doubt yourself. The line between genuine emotions and forced smiles becomes blurred. This kind of manipulation doesn't just damage relationships, it damages self-awareness itself. As Christine points out, It also explains why the older kids eventually stopped cooperating. As they grew, they became less willing to play along with their father's performance demands, and that's when the cracks in the system started showing for viewers at home. Christine's memoir exposes that Sister Wives wasn't just a reality show, it was a performance inside a performance, where love and attention were handed out like prizes for good behavior. The wives and children weren't just living their lives, they were acting under the constant threat of abandonment. And the emotional toll of that, Christine makes clear, has been enormous. Let's rewind to the very first episode when the Browns sat down to talk about adding Robin to the family. At the time, it looked like a warm and thoughtful family meeting. But looking back now, with Christine's new revelations in mind, that moment feels completely different. What once seemed like a simple group discussion now stands out as the very beginning of Kody's long-term pattern, a carefully staged setup that laid the groundwork for more than 10 years of manipulation. Now picture that living room scene. Kody sitting with the 3 original wives, the cameras in place, and all the kids gathered together to hear about a life-changing decision. From the start, Kody's tone set the stage. This wasn't just an announcement, it was an expectation. The family was supposed to react with enthusiasm, curiosity, and full support for his new relationship. Anything less than smiles and encouragement would be remembered, and as Christine has revealed, it often came with consequences later. Logan, who was still just a teenager at the time, jumped in with excitement about Robin joining the family. Maddie quickly added her own supportive comment, saying it might feel strange at first, but that they'd get used to it. Looking back now, it's clear these kids had already learned the unspoken rule. Family meetings weren't true discussions. They were performances, and everyone was expected to deliver the right answers. The children who played along earned continued access to their father's approval and attention. But here's what makes that footage so unsettling. None of these kids had ever experienced their dad marrying someone new. The plural marriage structure was already in place before they were born, so they had no way of grasping how disruptive it would feel to watch their father court another woman. Yet in that moment, with cameras capturing every reaction, they were asked to cheer for a situation they couldn't possibly understand. The message was clear. Hesitation was dangerous. Expressing uncertainty about such a massive change was unacceptable. Asking how it would affect family dynamics or resources wasn't an option. Instead, the children were taught to smile, nod, and act grateful for whatever choices the adults made, no matter how much those choices shaped their daily lives. Rewatching the scene now is heartbreaking because of how young they were when they learned to bury their instincts and perform happiness on demand. They were being trained to place their father's emotions and public image above their own honest reactions to a life-altering event. The cameras weren't just documenting family history, they were enforcing the lesson that authenticity had no place in the Brown household. Kody's body language during that meeting reveals even more. He wasn't simply sharing news. He was scanning the room, studying faces, noting who smiled and who hesitated. His energy carried a quiet warning. This was not a family conversation. It was a loyalty test, and everyone knew the cost of failing it. The 3 original wives were also performing during that scene, though in a quieter way. Their job wasn't just to respond themselves, but to model for their children how much enthusiasm was considered acceptable. Any private doubts, concerns about money, questions about resources, or worries about how the family dynamic would shift were carefully hidden. What the cameras captured instead were supportive smiles and encouraging words. That moment set the stage for how big announcements would play out for the next decade. The formula was simple and repeated again and again. Kody made the decision on his own. The family was called together on camera, and everyone was expected to act grateful while filming. Christine's memoir makes the machinery of it crystal clear. She explains that cameras rolled in the Brown household every other day, which meant every other day became a high-stakes performance. The wives and kids weren't just living their lives. They were forced to act like eager participants in decisions they had no control over, performing gratitude while being filmed for the world to see. Imagine living with the knowledge that you only had 48 hours to recover before the next mandatory happiness session. This wasn't like other reality shows where cameras dropped in occasionally for dramatic moments or special events. In the Brown household, filming was constant and structured. Every other day, without fail, the cameras rolled, which meant every other day, the family had to be performance ready. That predictability made the pressure even heavier. There was no room for spontaneous, authentic emotions. If a real reaction happened to surface on a filming day, it could be punished. Christine explains that family members weren't just monitoring their words, they had to control their faces. A raised eyebrow, a quick flash of doubt, a look of frustration, any of those tiny moments could set Kody off and lead to punishment through withdrawal. The children felt this pressure the most as they got older. Teenagers naturally push back, question authority, and struggle with moodiness. But in this family, normal adolescent behavior could result in their father stepping away entirely. The unspoken message was crushing. Your real feelings don't matter. Your growth and emotional development are less important than protecting the image of a happy plural family. And here's the darkest part. This system used the very thing that was supposed to keep the family secure. The show wasn't just their paycheck. It became the weapon Kody used to ration his love, his attention, and even his basic presence as a father. Family members couldn't resent the cameras because those cameras weren't just filming. They were tied directly to whether or not Kody showed up for them. The relentless, every other day schedule left no breathing room. Just as someone might start to relax and act naturally, the cameras would come back, forcing them into their roles again. It was a cycle of performance and suppression, with no true escape, locking wives and children alike into a constant state of vigilance. The constant back and forth between real family life and staged family life must have been mentally exhausting, especially for the children. Imagine the whiplash of having to switch from being yourself to performing for the cameras every other day. Even basic decision-making inside the household was affected. Every choice, whether it was a big move or something as small as a household routine, had to be filtered through two questions. How will this look on camera? And can we put on the right show of enthusiasm? Real conversations became impossible. With cameras present, every discussion carried the pressure of being judged, not on the decision itself, but on how convincingly everyone could act supportive. Major life changes couldn't be processed in private, the way most families would. Instead, they had to be reacted to instantly, and always positively, because the cameras were rolling and the show had to go on. One of the clearest examples of this pressure system happened when Kody and Robin announced that she was pregnant with Solomon. That moment exposed just how wide the gap was between the enthusiasm Kody demanded and the reality his kids were actually living. Picture it. Kody practically buzzing with excitement, his energy filling the room. Robin by his side, glowing, ready to share what he clearly believed was joyful news. On his face, the expectation was obvious. He wanted cheers, smiles, and congratulations. To him, a new baby was nothing but a blessing, and he expected everyone else to share that view without hesitation. But teenagers aren't so easy to script. They tend to react honestly, especially when caught off guard by news that directly affects their daily lives. Hunter's subdued response, Aspen and Maddie sitting stiffly, avoiding eye contact, refusing to smile, these weren't acts of rebellion. They were real reactions from kids who understood better than anyone what this meant for their family. With Christine's revelations in mind, the scene takes on a new weight. These kids weren't being difficult. They were showing a kind of emotional intelligence their father should have admired. They knew another baby meant less of his already limited time, fewer resources, and even more strain on an already complicated family dynamic. Their quiet responses weren't disrespect. They were the grounded, realistic assessments of children who had been living the challenges of plural marriage their entire lives. Kody's disappointment was written all over his face, and it spoke volumes. He wasn't upset that his children needed time to process the pregnancy news. He was upset that they didn't deliver the same level of over-the-top enthusiasm Logan once displayed during Robin's courtship reveal. That contrast laid his priorities bare. What Kody wanted wasn't honesty. He wanted a performance. He craved the applause, the eager smiles, the validation that made him feel like the center of gravity in his fractured household. The kids' real feelings? Irrelevant. Their hesitations? Unacceptable. For Kody, their role was simple. Play along, cheer loudly, and make his moment shine. What cuts deepest in hindsight is imagining the fallout once the cameras stopped rolling. Christine's memoir pulled the curtain back on the Brown family's punishment system, exposing what those lukewarm responses really cost the kids. Authentic reactions weren't tolerated. A teenager who failed to fake excitement could expect swift and painful consequences, chief among them being erased from Kody's orbit. His absence wasn't just a disappointment, it was a weapon. A reminder that their father's affection came with conditions, that if they didn't perform joy on command, they'd pay for it in silence and abandonment. Logan's earlier reaction to Robin had become the gold standard, the measuring stick for every big family moment that followed. But even that enthusiasm wasn't a timeless truth. It was the product of a younger boy who hadn't yet endured years of manufactured happiness. He hadn't yet been beaten down by the exhausting charade of always smiling, always agreeing, always pretending that Kody's unilateral decisions were blessings rather than burdens. That first wide-eyed reaction became a curse for everyone else. Kody expected it every time, as though joy could be summoned like a prop on set. And then there was Robin. Her body language in that scene spoke almost louder than the words exchanged. She wasn't basking in the announcement glow. She was watching, calculating, measuring every flicker of expression from the older kids, because she knew, just like everyone else, that Kody would interpret any hesitation as disloyalty. And when Kody was displeased, it was never Robin who bore the brunt. The burden always landed on the original wives and their children. So Robin adjusted, carefully managing her own reactions, ensuring that nothing in her face betrayed concern. She was learning fast. Authenticity wasn't just discouraged, it was dangerous. That's the true horror of the moment. These kids were trapped in a no-win scenario. Smile too little, and you risk punishment. Smile too much, and you betray your own feelings. Every announcement became a test of loyalty. Every celebration became a performance. Childhood itself was staged. When Christine's memoir finally dropped, the reaction online was nothing short of seismic. In fan spaces across the internet, it was like hearing a collective gasp turn into a collective sigh of relief. Viewers who had been second-guessing themselves for years finally had confirmation. They hadn't imagined the tension. They hadn't misread the awkward silences or forced grins. They had seen what they thought they'd seen. Children and wives trapped in a system where authenticity was punished and performance was demanded. Reddit lit up first. The mega thread became a kind of group therapy, a digital support circle for longtime watchers. One comment crystallized the bombshell perfectly. Kody stopped spending any time with the OG3 and their kids once Robin showed up. None at all. The commenter went further, explaining Christine's reveal that filming every other day turned life into a minefield. A wrong word, a wrong expression, and Kody would retaliate by withdrawing completely. His presence became conditional currency, spent only when obedience was guaranteed. Suddenly, years of odd family dynamics clicked into place. This wasn't speculation anymore. Christine had supplied the missing puzzle piece. Every stiff smile, every uncomfortable glance, it all made sense. Fans flooded the threads with "I knew it" posts. But this wasn't gloating, it was vindication. After a decade of being gaslit by TLC's glossy edits, viewers finally had confirmation that their instincts had been dead right. The relief spread across platforms like wildfire. Facebook groups buzzed with screenshots of the juiciest revelations. Instagram stories filled with commentary, even offline. Quilting circles, coffee clatches, and group chats lit up with the news. Everyone who had ever raised an eyebrow at the show's narrative was sharing in the collective aha moment. The truth had been hiding in plain sight, and Christine had finally given people permission to trust their own eyes. What made this wave of online validation so powerful was the way it underscored the collective wisdom of an audience that had been paying attention for over a decade. These weren't casual viewers flipping channels for background noise. They were attentive witnesses, cataloging patterns, reading subtext, and refusing to accept the glossy picture of harmony the show insisted on selling. Again and again, fans spotted inconsistencies, voiced concerns, and flagged troubling behaviors, only to have their observations dismissed as wild speculation or overactive imagination. Then came Christine's memoir, and suddenly every whispered suspicion was confirmed in black and white. For many, it wasn't just about finally cracking the code of the Brown household. It was about something deeper, recognizing manipulation for what it was. Readers who had lived through similar cycles of emotional control, silent punishments, or forced performances in their own lives found themselves staring into a mirror. Christine's words validated not only their observations of the show, but their instincts. In their personal relationships, when something feels off, when the dynamic feels suffocating, when smiles look painted on, it's usually because the truth is being buried beneath performance. Christine's book gave them permission to believe their gut. And that's what made the online explosion feel bigger than just reality TV chatter. It wasn't merely analysis of a family on screen. It was a digital support network where thousands of people said to one another, "You're not crazy, you saw it too." The family members inside the Brown household had been trapped, gaslit, told again and again that their honest reactions were wrong or inappropriate. But outside those walls, millions of viewers had been quietly compiling evidence. Christine's memoir turned that quiet conviction into a chorus, affirming that authenticity is never the problem. Manipulation is. One scene in particular stands out in hindsight, carrying new weight now that Christine has revealed the cost of truth-telling inside that family. Rewatching the moment she confronted Robin about hiring a nanny feels almost like watching someone walk into battle, fully aware of the retaliation waiting on the other side. Cameras were rolling, the family was lined up for what should have been another carefully managed interview. And then Christine broke the unspoken rule. She let raw emotion cut through the script. Her words were simple, but devastating. "It was really difficult for me when you got a babysitter, because my first thought was, why aren't we good enough? Why don't you trust me with your kids? Why wouldn't you ask me first?" There was no performance in her tone, no plastered smile, just pain, direct, honest, and unmistakable. And in that honesty, Christine shattered the illusion Kody had worked so hard to protect. Because under Kody's performance code, wives weren't supposed to question Robin. They weren't supposed to display hurt or draw attention to the growing cracks in the so-called sisterhood. Christine had broken every rule. She wasn't affirming Robin's decisions. She wasn't performing gratitude. She was saying out loud what everyone else had been told to swallow. Robin didn't want partnership. She didn't want equality. She wanted control, and Kody was willing to enforce it. Robin's reaction was immediate and telling. The barely audible, "Are you serious right now?" paired with a look of absolute disbelief said it all. This wasn't just irritation at Christine's words. It was shock that Christine would dare puncture the carefully scripted fantasy on camera. Robin understood instantly that this moment would tarnish her image as the perfect, joyful addition to the family. And if there was one thing Robin knew, it was that Kody would defend her reputation at all costs. The tension in that room was suffocating, and the fallout was inevitable. Christine has since made it clear how the punishment system worked. Step out of line. During filming, and Kody vanished, he would withhold his presence, his attention, his fatherhood, turning his absence into a weapon. For Christine, speaking her truth almost certainly meant weeks, maybe months, of being frozen out. Her children left to wonder why their father had once again disappeared. Looking back, Christine's confrontation wasn't about a babysitter. It was about the deeper betrayal simmering under the surface. Robin's decision to hire a nanny wasn't just logistical, it was symbolic. It represented her refusal to build genuine bonds with the other wives, to create the interdependence that plural marriage supposedly required. Christine's question, "Don't you want a relationship with me? Don't you want a relationship with a sister wife?" wasn't about childcare. It was about the entire foundation of their family. And when she whispered, "You're never going to need me," the heartbreak was palpable. That one sentence carried years of exclusion, of being sidelined, of watching herself and her children rendered unnecessary in their own home. Christine wasn't mourning the loss of babysitting duties. She was mourning the loss of her role, her worth, her place in a family that had been restructured around making one woman indispensable, while everyone else faded into the background. What Christine was really pointing out wasn't just a disagreement over a nanny, it was the systematic erasure of her role, the slow dismantling of what it meant to even be a sister wife in that family. But as devastating as Christine's exclusion was, the most chilling revelations in her memoir have nothing to do with the adult women who at least entered this arrangement with some measure of choice. The true heartbreak lies in what this system did to the children, those who had no say, no power, and no escape from the twisted rules that governed their daily lives. Christine lays it bare. The children learned, almost from the time they could talk, that authenticity was dangerous. They discovered that expressing doubt, disappointment, or even curiosity about their father's decisions came with a heavy price. Love was conditional. Affection had to be earned. And the way you earned it was by performing excitement on cue, no matter how earth-shattering the news being delivered actually was. Picture the brutality of it. These kids weren't just expected to sit still or behave politely when cameras rolled. They were commanded, implicitly but unmistakably, to suppress every natural reaction to life-altering changes and replace it with a smile. The news could be another cross-country move, a new sibling, or the addition of yet another wife. The expectation never changed. You will act thrilled or you will pay. The psychological violence embedded in that unspoken or else is staggering. The children were never invited into genuine family discussions. Their input was irrelevant. Decisions about homes, schools, and time with their father were made behind closed doors. When the kids finally heard about them, it was always in front of cameras, where their job wasn't to understand or adapt, but to perform gratitude for choices already finalized. What the audience saw as family meetings were nothing more than staged loyalty tests, filmed sessions where children were graded on how convincingly they could play along. Take Hunter, for example. Imagine being his age and learning on camera that your father had gotten yet another wife pregnant. A natural, healthy response would have been worry, maybe even sadness. Certainly questions about how already thin resources would stretch even further, but under Kody's rules, none of those responses were allowed. Hunter wasn't permitted to be authentic. He had to smile, nod, clap, and pretend to celebrate. And if he didn't, the punishment was clear. Kody would simply vanish from his life. This wasn't just a reality TV gimmick. It was the foundation of their household. Christine reveals that the cameras weren't documenting real conversations. They were recording mandatory enthusiasm sessions. Every child had to prove, again and again, that they were willing to put their father's validation above their own emotional truth. And the damage went far deeper than filming days. When your entire childhood is shaped by a system that teaches you to doubt your instincts, the scars are permanent. These kids absorbed a toxic lesson. Love isn't unconditional, it's transactional. Attention isn't your birthright. It's a reward you receive only when you suppress yourself and make someone else look good. Questioning authority wasn't just frowned upon. It was treated as an offense so severe it could erase your father from your life for weeks, even months. The saddest part is how it trained them to gaslight themselves. If your every honest reaction is met with withdrawal, criticism, or punishment, you start to wonder if your feelings are the problem. The older children likely began losing touch with their own emotional reality, forgetting what they actually felt about these seismic family shifts and instead focusing only on what they were supposed to feel. But time has a way of cracking even the most rigid systems. Teenagers by nature push back. They individuate. They stop buying into facades. And as the Brown kids grew older, their willingness to keep faking it drained away. The exhaustion was visible on their faces, in their stiff body language, in the long silences where smiles should have been. Kody's formula of punishments and rewards might have worked when they were younger, but adolescence shattered his illusion of control. And here's the ultimate irony. The very system Kody built to preserve his image was the one that doomed him. His endless demand for loyalty performances didn't create the grateful, happy family he imagined. It created resentment. It bred mistrust. It taught his children to see through him, long before they ever walked away. By trying to force eternal gratitude, he guaranteed rebellion. By making love conditional, he lost it. The fractures were inevitable. Once the kids aged out of being easily controlled by the threat of abandonment, the performance collapsed. What emerged instead was a family splintered not by polygamy itself, but by the relentless demand that everyone inside it pretend they were grateful for circumstances that were, in truth, slowly destroying them. Teenagers are built to push back. It's part of their development, and no amount of manipulation can fully erase that instinct. The Brown kids were no different. As they got older, their individual identities grew stronger, and with that came a sharper understanding of what healthy relationships should look like. The tolerance they once had for faking smiles and pretending to be thrilled about decisions that excluded them began to fade fast. What Kody failed to calculate in his system was simple. Children grow up. The little ones who once clapped and cheered for his courtships and household changes became young adults with the ability to recognize psychological games for what they were. The same kids who had been trained to swallow their questions and put on a happy face started asking the uncomfortable things out loud. Why don't our opinions matter? Why are life-altering choices made without us? Why are we only here to clap for decisions already made? And that's where the system revealed its fatal flaw. When every conversation and family gathering is filtered through performance requirements, true bonding never has a chance. These children weren't building genuine relationships with their father. They were learning to manage him. Their energy wasn't going into connecting with him, but into predicting his moods, managing his expectations, and making sure they didn't slip up in front of cameras. That isn't love. That's survival. And survival strategies can only hold for so long before they break. Christine's departure can be seen as the ultimate breakdown of the entire system. For years, she played her part, navigating the punishment cycles, holding up the illusion of gratitude, and protecting the public narrative of a functioning plural marriage. But eventually, the cost became unbearable, performing thankfulness for neglect, smiling through disrespect, and pretending her voice mattered when it didn't. It was too much to sustain. Walking away wasn't just leaving Kody. It was refusing to play the game anymore. Her memoir is the smoking gun. Not only did Christine escape the control system, she put it on paper for the world to see. Kody didn't just lose control over her presence in his life, he lost control of the narrative itself. Every secret tactic, every manipulation pattern, every punishment cycle he once used to maintain authority is now exposed as evidence of who he really is, not the loving, selfless patriarch of the show's storyline, but a man who weaponized love and affection to keep his family under control. The pandemic years only accelerated this collapse. Kody's inconsistent rules, his blatant favoritism toward Robyn, and his ever-changing standards couldn't be disguised anymore, no matter how carefully the footage was edited. His selective presence became undeniable. When children were told they couldn't see their father because of his protocols, only to watch him spend time freely at Robyn's house, the illusion of fairness shattered beyond repair. Equal treatment was a myth, and now everyone, including the audience, could see it. What makes this downfall so fitting is that Kody's own actions created the evidence that destroyed him. Every sulk, every absence, every obvious preference for Robyn, all of it was documented on camera or remembered by family members who now feel free to speak their truth. The control tactics that once silenced dissent are the very reasons his image is crumbling. The children who were forced into fake smiles are now adults who can describe the trauma of conditional love. The wives who once had to beg for scraps of attention are now telling their stories without fear of punishment. And Kody's carefully constructed system of manipulation has become the foundation for his total loss of influence over how the world views him. There's a poetic justice in it. The truth itself became the antidote to years of forced performance. Christine's courage to speak broke open a dam, and the very platform Kody once used to enforce silence, his reality show, is now the stage where his failures are exposed in plain sight. The ripple effects go far beyond sister wives fandom or reality TV debates. Christine's memoir is bigger than one family. It's a masterclass in reclaiming your story from a manipulative partner. It's proof that speaking up doesn't just heal the speaker. It gives others the courage to recognize and name manipulation in their own lives. Her descriptions of the filming day punishment system are more than just behind-the-scenes gossip. They are a clear, educational example of how emotional control works in countless homes and relationships. The pattern is universal. Using presence and absence as tools of reward and punishment, demanding gratitude in exchange for neglect, and systematically invalidating authentic feelings. These are red flags many people live with quietly, without realizing they are being manipulated. By naming them out loud, Christine handed people everywhere the language to finally describe their own experiences. She gave them permission to trust their instincts when something feels off. Her story is personal, but its value is collective. It validates the intuition of anyone who has ever felt the sting of conditional love or been told that their authentic emotions are too much. For the Brown kids who spent their entire childhoods navigating Kody's conditional love system, Christine's public acknowledgement must feel like finally being believed after years of being told their natural reactions were wrong. Imagine growing up with your feelings constantly labeled as selfish, dramatic, or ungrateful, only to hear, years later, someone with authority and credibility confirm that your instincts were right all along. That kind of validation isn't just comforting, it's healing. It cracks open the years of self-doubt that had been carefully planted in them, showing that the dysfunction wasn't in them. It was in the system built around them. And it's not just the Brown children who are experiencing that sense of relief. The broader Sister Wives audiences, too. For more than a decade, fans sat on their couches watching scenes that didn't feel quite right. Something always seemed off. The power imbalances, the cold dismissals, the emotional hoops the wives and kids had to jump through. But because the show packaged these dynamics as family culture, or plural marriage quirks, many viewers second-guess their own discomfort. Christine's memoir blows the cover off that illusion. It gives viewers permission to say out loud what they've always felt in their gut. This wasn't healthy. This wasn't love. This was manipulation, plain and simple. Christine's decision to tell the truth also sets a precedent that goes far beyond her own marriage. She's showing women everywhere that image management doesn't outweigh honesty, that preserving an abuser's reputation isn't more important than protecting your children or yourself from harm. In a society that often pressures women to smile through mistreatment for the sake of the family, Christine's bold refusal to protect Kody's legacy is revolutionary. It tells every woman in a suffocating relationship that her silence isn't noble. It's what keeps the system alive. The ripple effects aren't just emotional, they could be legal and financial too. When someone lays out in black and white how they endured years of manipulation and control, that record doesn't just vanish into the air. It becomes documentation, evidence, a narrative that can and likely will influence custody arrangements, financial disputes, and future courtrooms. Christine's words are not just storytelling, they're a paper trail, one that proves the psychological environment her children were raised in and the conditional framework that shaped their lives. But maybe the most powerful lesson here is Christine's reminder that it's never too late to reclaim your story. For years she played her part, propping up Kody's carefully staged illusion of harmony. She smiled on camera, shouldered neglect, and performed gratitude. And then one day, she simply stopped. Her memoir stands as proof that even after decades of silence, you can still rip the script out of someone else's hands and write your own ending. No amount of time spent inside a manipulative system erases your right to walk away and to speak. And speak she has. Her revelations have cracked open a conversation that isn't going to fade with the closing chapter of her book. She's forced discussions about emotional abuse, conditional love, and the devastating cost of keeping family secrets under the guise of unity. She's shifted the sister wives' story from one of quirky polygamy to one of raw accountability, and women everywhere are watching, nodding, and whispering, finally. So here we are, standing in the aftershocks of Christine's truth bomb, with the glossy surface of sister wives shattered beyond repair. The national sisterhood of women who know the sting of manipulation has been validated, and the cultural conversation about what healthy relationships really look like has been elevated to a higher plane. Now the question becomes, where does it go from here? Will Christine's courage spark a chain reaction, pushing other reality TV family members to step forward and expose what the cameras didn't show? And which part of Kody's control tactics left you reeling the most? Was it the cruel filming day punishment structure or the heartbreaking expectation that children should perform excitement about decisions that completely change their lives? Hit like, subscribe, and keep those notifications on, because trust me, this is only the beginning. Christine may have opened the floodgates, but the wave of revelations is still building. And something tells me the next round of Sister Wives truth bombs will make this one look tame.